Put your hands together for the one and only Tracy Glennon. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks. Wonderful. Thank you. Well, it's interesting because we used to work together for Good Life at the same time. Maybe this one? I do. Someone actually got to slip it up my dress. It was a little more exciting than I thought this morning. We used to work together for Good Life Fitness, and he was in a different role. We're involved in sales, and clearly you need to be a fitness instructor is what I'm thinking at this point in time. So I'm here to share something a little different. That's all right.
In your dress, so I'm going to give you this one. Okay.
I'll take this one. This one's fine. So I'm here to talk about something a little different today. You know, you think you know strength until you hear someone like Elaine redefine what strength is. And when everyone shares a story like that, it does make you start to question your own personal stories. And my goal today really is to get you to question what you're passionate about, what your role is, and what you're doing in life right now, and is it what you're meant to be doing? So I really want to know what you want to be when you grow up. I still ask myself that question. I know he gave the impression that I'm 24, and I'm not, I'm 45, but I'm still asking myself that question at 45, or so I thought. What do I want to be when I grow up? So I'm going to share with you 4 little epiphanies or catalysts for change that I had that made me realize that following your passion is almost always the answer in deciding what you want to do in life. So I'd like all of you to close your eyes. I can't really see you, so it's fair that you can't really see me then for a minute too. So I'd love all of you to close your eyes and just visualize for a moment. I want you to take yourself back to a time when you were 6 or 8 or 16 and ask yourself, at that point in time, if someone said to you, when I grow up I want to be a, fill in the blank. Do you remember what you wanted to be as a child when you grew up? So open your eyes. 25 years ago, when we answered that question, there were probably 6 answers you could give, and 90% of us would fall into that category, right? You wanted to be a teacher, or a lawyer, or a ballet dancer, or a fireman, something along that line. There were pretty traditional roles that still existed at that point in time. We didn't have really cool shows like CSI that taught me that really, I think deep in my heart, I am meant to be a crime scene investigator, right? Enough of this fitness stuff. We didn't have shows to teach us things like that. We had things like Buffy the Vampire Slayer or Roswell or X-Files, kind of fantasy shows. It's not a real career to be a vampire slayer. So when we thought of what we wanted to be, it was usually what our parents did, or something new and exciting, you know, a specialized field of teacher or something along that line. And when we decided to change our mind about what we wanted to be, it wasn't a big deal. When I went to university, I think tuition was $700 a semester or something, right? So if I made a mistake and said, you know what, after year 1, I really want to be something else, I want to go into a different field, it was maybe, you know, a $1,200, $1,500 mistake I was making. We're now asking our youth to make a decision that will impact them financially, potentially for the rest of their lives. I have 2 kids in university. One was at Queen's for 2 years, and the other one just left for Dalhousie. I've been corrected on how to say it, Dalhousie University. And when my son decided after year 2 at Queen's that he didn't want to be a theoretical physicist, and I probably could have told him that, but you need to let them have these mistakes, it's a $20,000 mistake, right? It's not a $1,200 mistake anymore. So we ask them to do it younger when they're not as prepared to do it. How many people in this audience went to school and earned a diploma or a degree of some sort, and you have a job now that has nothing to do with that? Thank you. I feel I'm not the only person, right? I went to university and I got my bachelor in English honors. Like I really, it has nothing to do with what I do, except some days I'm more articulate than others maybe. So you're not alone. A Washington Post study showed that 27% of graduates, only 27% of graduates have a job that is related to the major that they took in university. If you don't have children in university yet, start adding those $10,000 up per year when you think that only 27% are actually in something that they majored in. How many of you remember when you were small, did your parents have, I don't know if they're called memory books, those booklets where every year they put your school picture in, your individual picture, how many teeth you lost, what your pet's name was, who your best friends were, And one of the questions it always asked was, what do you want to be when you grow up? Does anyone remember those? Does anyone know what they're actually called? Oh, well, thank you. Clearly, I knew what I was talking about. I actually researched it, like Googled it, because I had no idea what they were called. So memory books. So every single year, from grade school to high school, I wrote the exact same answer down. I wrote teacher. My grandmother was a teacher. She taught at the high school that I went to. She taught all my friends and my friends' parents. My mother was more traditional. She was a nurse initially and then became an administrative executive, I think they're called, in an office. So they had quite traditional roles as well, but I really wanted to be a teacher. And most of it had to do with the fact that I really, really liked to be the boss of other people, right? So I didn't want to be the person in the classroom. I wanted to be the one telling everyone in that classroom what to do. So I went to university with the concept that I was going to get my bachelor in English and I was going to go to teachers college after that. But then I went to university and all of a sudden a world opened up. I had honestly never heard of subjects like philosophy, psychology, biomechanics, anthropology, sociology, all these ology words. I had never heard any of them. Teacher didn't end like that, right? But I went there and I had this idea of what I wanted to be, and all of a sudden it started to change. So my whole life I had this really preconceived idea of what my life was going to look like. God, I even knew what my classroom was going to look like when I was a teacher, right? You visualize these things, you plan these things. So I had epiphany number one. And my first epiphany was, dream and give yourself permission to envision a you that you choose to be. The challenge was, I didn't know what that me was going to be anymore. The minute I stepped away from teaching. So I did what most people did. I got my bachelor, and then I went and got a job because I didn't know what to do and I wasn't ready to commit to teachers college. So I applied to the government, because that's what everyone in Ottawa does when they come out of university typically. So I went and applied to the government, and someone called, and my machine was so garbled I actually didn't even know who called me and what job it was for. I just returned the number. My dad, is it a CR3, is it a P whatever, 4, is it, I had no idea. But what happened was I went and I interviewed with Revenue Canada Taxation. And when I went to the interview, the reason I got the job was I was the only candidate who actually knew what the Dewey Decimal System was. Does anyone know what the Dewey Decimal System is? Thank you. So I was the only person who not only knew it, but knew how to use it. So clearly, at university, I had gone to the library at some point in time and had to find a book on a shelf, right? So I was highly qualified for this job, and I ended up with taxation. And I was so excited. I can't even tell you how excited I was. I was in the real world. I now had a job. My husband was doing his master's. I was it, right? I was the person supporting the family. And when I started at taxation, I went in there with this fantastic idea of what it was going to be like to work with adults. And I worked with some wonderful people at taxation, so I'm not knocking taxation in any way now. But at the time, it was a very toxic environment. And toxic meant that when I walked in, I was actually surrounded by people who were waiting to retire. Not only were they waiting to retire, at every cubicle, some of you might relate, they actually had a little calendar with the number of days left that they had to work. And religiously they walked in every day and they X'd off a number and they went, I have 4,320 days to 4,319 days. And I'm not kidding you. The average age in the office was closer to 50 and I was 21 or something along that line, and they were really waiting to retire. And I started to fall into this routine where every day I went for break, not at 10:58 and not at 11:02, but exactly at 11 o'clock. And I ate the 2 same digestive biscuits and ordered the same size coffee every day. And I had this realization that this was a job and not a career. But I really liked the part I was doing, so I was like, well, what do I do with this? And I thought, you know what? I'm going to be a librarian. I'm going to go do my master's in library science, and I'm going to do research for taxation lawyers or whoever it is. I needed a title. I needed an identity. I need something to relate with. But then I had kind of a rude awakening. I remember sitting at my desk one day. Everything's in order, because I had nothing else to do but put everything in order on my desk mostly every day. And someone had borrowed a pencil from me. And it wasn't a fancy pencil. It wasn't a mechanical pencil or anything. It was like an orange HB, you buy 24 of them for $2.99 at Staples. Someone had borrowed a pencil. And it was 3:30 and my pencil hadn't been returned. Okay? So my stress level, 2:50, 3 o'clock, 3:10 is increasing and increasing and increasing. And it was important to me because at 3:30, I left to catch the 3:35 bus to get back to Canada. This was my routine. This is what I did every day. I am a creature of habit. So I missed my bus. And I caught the next bus, and I went home and I said to my husband, this idiot did not return my pencil today, so that person made me miss my bus. And he looked at me, and he simply said, you're not the same person that you were before you started this job. Rude? I think rude awakening. So I had epiphany number 2. There is no passion to be found playing small in settling for a life that is less than the one that you are capable of living. Nelson Mandela said that a lot nicer than I would have. But it was true. I wasn't using my capability. I was finding myself lost in a world and sucked into this dark hole that I needed to get out of. So I decided to leave. But what was I going to do? So I did what everyone else does then. I decided my new title was going to be Mom, and I got pregnant. And I loved it. I had a wonderful, beautiful 20-year-old son who still to me is that wonderful, beautiful, small child that I had. And I wasn't just going to be mom, I was going to be super mom. So I don't know if you've been there, but this means that it doesn't matter if anyone drops by in your house at any time, it looks like Martha Stewart had just set the set for you, right? I didn't use recyclable diapers, I used cloth diapers, and I hung them outside so the dryer wouldn't run. I pureed more pumpkin and peas and potatoes than you can possibly imagine, right? I was super mom, so I let everyone believe. And my son was awesome. I had the best son. He slept through everything in the world, so he played along with me. He was super child. And after about 6 months, we were really bored of this role, the two of us. And I had mastered everything and pureed all the pumpkin I could, and I thought, I need to do something more. So I walked into a women's health fit studio, and I started to take aerobics classes. And I'm talking aerobics, I'm talking neon and thong, the whole bit. And I would go in and I would get my groove on to CNC Music Factory or something for an hour every morning, and my son would socialize with others, and I felt phenomenal. And this little light started to glow inside me. It could have been the neon, but either way, a little light started to glow inside me. And I thought, this is something I need to do. And being that I like to be the boss of everyone, I thought, I'm not a very good participant in this class because I really want to go that way when she's telling me to go that way. So within a month I was certified in teaching, so I could tell people what direction they needed to move in. And I continued in this path, and I started to really enjoy it because I was actually teaching others in some capacity, right? And I had my daughter. So I was 4 months pregnant with my daughter, and this is a little side story for it. When I was driving to teach a class, and all of a sudden I couldn't see any of the cars on the right-hand side. And I didn't quite know why, but I thought, well, that's weird. Everything's kind of gray over there. And I didn't pay a lot of attention. I went and I taught, some sort of strange sculpting class. And went home and I said to my husband, I feel like I have something in my eye. I can't quite see right. And he said, well, just go to sleep and see. And I woke up and I still had something in my eye. And he said, you know what, you better get it checked out. So I went to the eye doctor, and my eye doctor said, well, what's the worst it can be, really? And 25 minutes later, I was in an ambulance being rushed to the Ottawa Civic. And this isn't a tragic story at all, but I did have an embolism. I had had a stroke, they confirmed, when I was 4 months pregnant with my daughter. And what the interesting part of this story is that I had found my light again. I was starting to shine, feel good, and feel inspired by something I was doing, and they told me I had to abruptly stop everything. So I had to act like I was 80 for the rest of my pregnancy. I was on heparin, I was in a wheelchair for a couple weeks while the stress wore off. And my husband was pushing me around the gallery, an art gallery, and I thought, this cannot be it. I cannot live like this. I can't handle this. And they said, expect a cesarean, no pushing allowed. Thank God she was tiny, I didn't have to worry about any of it. But I had my daughter, and 3 months later, I was back up and running, because the reason I had a stroke was simply a protein S deficiency, which at that point in time they didn't test women for. And it's very common, and it was genetic, and you could actually trace it back through my family. It was just a matter of blood thinners, and it was the hormonal fluctuation of being pregnant that brought it on. So I knew I was going towards a full recovery after this. But having had that stroke really made me recognize the energy and the passion for something I had been starting to feel. So I had that third epiphany. And they weren't in quotes like this, just so you know, they didn't appear to me like this. But it was the idea that passion is energy. Feel the power that comes from focusing on what excites you. That's actually Oprah that said that one. The passion of what excites you. And I realized that part of that for me was up teaching people. It was in a field that was healthy, where I felt invigorated, exciting, tired at the end of the day, but happy. You're being paid nothing, and you're up there dancing around, and it was wonderful. So I started to move into those roles a little bit, and I was the facilitator or coordinator, or whatever you called them, at all of them, all across the west end of Ottawa for years. And then someone said to me, Good Life Fitness is coming to town. They're taking over the Rideau Centre and the Queensview Athletic Club at the time, or the Queensview, yes, I think it was called that. And there's going to be a position for a program coordinator. And you really should apply for it, but the job is the day after tomorrow. So part of me wanted this, and I wanted this badly. I just knew something inside to me that said, this is what you need to do. This is where you need to go. So I got the contact name of the person that I needed to get a hold of, and her name was Maureen Hagan. And I kept calling the 1-800 contact number. And the challenge I had was it kept going to a voicemail. And I was like, this woman needs to know about me. I sounded really cocky, didn't I? But I was like, she just needs to know, I just need a chance, right? And so I kept trying to contact her and couldn't. So then I did what every other person does, and I stalked her. I really did. I was like, I checked out everywhere this woman was going to be, her travel schedule, and I started to call the Good Life home office. And I would randomly punch in extensions. And I would say, oh, I'm sorry, I meant to dial Maureen's extension. Can you put me through to her? And the first 12 people didn't fall for it. And the 13th person fell for it. And I still remember who that person is and tease him about it today, because he's the reason I'm with the company probably. Because he's like, oh sure, she's in the office beside me, just a minute. And the next thing I knew, someone was going, Mo Hagan speaking, how can I help you? And in 2 minutes, I downloaded everything I needed to say to her about why she needed to interview me. So luckily, she recognized a passion. She recognized a light, something that allowed her to say, I should interview this person. She came to Ottawa 2 days later, and I went through the most grueling interview. Honestly, I don't think the president goes through an interview like I went through for this. It was a 2-hour interview. I stood in a studio with her as my one pretend participant while she wrote notes, and I did all those things, and a whole lot of grapevines, clapping at the time, right? I did it all. I needed to shine. And somehow the next day she said, you are it. You are the person. This is a job for you. But what she said to me was the most important part. She said, you are the person for this job because I've never seen anyone with so much passion and so much enthusiasm. And you might not have all the knowledge, but the other two things are going to get you there. So without passion, you don't have energy. Without energy, you have nothing. And I truly believe that. I have been in those jobs, as I shared, where I didn't have a passion for what I was doing. So the purpose today was not just to tell you my story, because a lot of you have stories that are very similar, but it was actually to come full circle for a moment. So remember at the start, I said to you, close your eyes, pretend you're 6, say what your career was at that time, what you wanted to be. I'd like you to close your eyes again. If you fall asleep, Zumba's next and you'll miss out, so yeah. So at this point, I want you to be in the body and the age that you are now. And I want you to ask yourself that same question. When you grow up, what do you want to be? When I grow up, I want to be a, and fill in the blank. Keeping your eyes closed, ask yourself if you've made the right decisions in your life. Have you taken steps and actions towards getting yourself to that you want to be when you grow up? Have you taken steps to ensure that every single day you get out of bed and you are invigorated and excited and pumped up to get out of bed and go to work and do what you were meant to do? So just gently open your eyes again. And just remember that it is your passion that empowers you to be able to do that you were created to do. And it's never, ever, ever too late to change your mind. So dream big, believe when no one else does, and more importantly, act. Write it down. We hear it in everything we see, right? Write down your goals. I believe in it 100%. Shout it from a rooftop. I once shouted, I'm going to do an Ironman. And I was like, oh, how do I take it back? And you couldn't, right? So then I had to do it, and I had to learn to swim because I didn't even know how to swim, right? Shout those things out because it honestly makes it happen. It really, really does. So just remember, it's never too late to change your passion. Thank you very much. I am going to ask everyone really quickly. You're about to get your Zumba on. I don't even know what Zumba is. I'm not a dancey person, but you're about to get your Zumba on. So we're going to do our best to get you out there to the yoga and Zumba as fast as you can, so that you don't miss out any of it and miss your exercise moment of the day, okay? So we're on that little break. So it is up